What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Big Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It's a press coverage show. We go back and look at some of the headlines from Sunday on Monday. A little bit of a deeper dive. Joining me to do so, Tyler Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
What's up, Will? How you doing?
Good. We're having like this. It's always funny when you have like a spirited conversation before the podcast, and you have to we're like, hold on, we have to stop this like enjoyable discussion, like rant about. We were ranting about Marvel movies. Maybe one day we should just do a spinoff.
There is 100% a market for
Sports
podcast conversations before the podcast starts. I feel like I would listen to every podcast, like the whatever you want to call it, the 15 minutes before you actually start. I'd listen to every single. I don't even care what podcast it is. I want that conversation.
That's a great call. It's like the sort of like the muffin top corollary, right? Like, you know, like Seinfeld, where it's like I don't want the actual muffin. I want this the top of the like Brady. I swear, and we just had to stop like talking before the shows because like Brady, before we do like Brady Quinn shows, we would have like 10 minutes of just hilarious, like just, and it'd be like, why are we not recording this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We were sort of ranting, we were ranting on Marvel comics, but in order to avoid any nameless bosses yelling at me for distracting from the football talk, let's dive right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
And look, we're going to start. All four of the AFC East teams are in the playoffs right now. Wild. The AFC East. Like, I mean, if you had told somebody before the season that all four teams in the AFC East would be above 500 after 10 weeks of football, I don't think anybody would believe you.
Right. I mean, if we're talking
about, we talked about those situations where it's like, let's list out situations that are impossible before the season.
Yeah.
Let's say after 10 weeks, all four AFC teams will be in the playoffs, and just, you know, if obviously the playoffs started today, and just one AFC West team will be in. People will be like, that is the stupidest take I've ever heard in my life. And you're lying. You're like that's not conceivable and it won't happen. And yet here we are. It's happening anyway.
Like, what would you put that at? Is that a 50-1? Is that 100-1?
I mean, that the Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, and Bills would all be playoff teams after 10 weeks. And Denver's 3-6, Vegas is 2-7. Like, they're just probably not going to make the playoffs. The Chargers are the first team out in the AFC. But I mean, I think it would be like 500-1.
Yeah.
What number would I have had to offer you for you to put $100 on it? Because that's a good litmus test. Because it's like, if you're like, oh, I'll put $1 on it, like whatever,
right.
Throw it away. But like to put $100 on it, I don't think you do it for 50.
No, I think if you gave me like 75-1, I'd think about it, because you do have to remember this. I mean, as much as we're shocked about how this has turned out, you can talk yourself into it when you really start to think about it, because we were saying about the New York Jets.
The Jets have to be good.
Right. And we were saying, listen, this team had a fantastic draft. It's not like there was so much negativity about them going into the year as we may think. All of it was about the quarterback and what Zach Wilson does. Everything else around it, we're like, listen, they're building something pretty good here. Like, they're kind of following that Bills mode. So, you know, it's all about Wilson. If he stinks, then this team's probably not going to be that good. And let's see what happens this weekend when they host the New England, or the Patriots, when they go to New England to face the Patriots. That's a sneaky huge game on this slate.
Should we tell Billy his audio's on, or just let him like continue to like microwave whatever he's eating for lunch?
Well, I'm curious to see what he's cooking.
I know. I was kind of curious what he's pulling out of the microwave. Billy, what are you cooking?
I was throwing some things in the air fryer. I honestly forgot that I was not.
Yeah, we know. That's yeah. I didn't want you to be like, here go these idiots again, like under your breath or something like that.
Like, no. Yeah, I was just air frying some ravioli. So
air frying ravioli. What kind of ravioli?
Yeah.
I love ravioli.
Like cheese ravioli, so like they're like little nice cheese raviolis.
Is it
like mini lunch?
Is it like a?
They're frozen. They were like frozen and then breaded.
Okay.
Again, not to deviate too much from football. I got a little crock pot going upstairs with some shredded chicken going on.
So
we're cruising upstairs. We're doing all right here.
We'll take a break. And discuss some crock pot. What do you got in the crock pot?
It's like a steakhouse sauce, but it's chicken, and we're doing some nice stuff.
Recipe.
Yeah, it's some nice stuff. I do. I know my way around a crock pot. Again, very easy thing to cook, but I know how to do it.
My buddy Jake and his wife Michelle just had a baby, and so you do the meal train thing, you know what meal trains? Yeah. Yeah. So I'd signed up, and I was like, I make this Mexican quinoa casserole in the crock pot.
Ooh.
And it's like awesome. It's like, it's got like black beans, peppers, the quinoa gives it a nice like flavor. You get anyway, it's turkey sauce or turkey, ground turkey in there. I was going to make it for him, and I got all the stuff, and I realized that my crock pot had broken.
Oh no.
And so I had to pivot and make it in the Instapot. And I called Jake. I was like, I was supposed to be over there at like 6:30. It was like 6:15. I was like, listen, I don't know how this is going to come out because I've never done the Instapot. If there's a place you want to go food from instead, it actually ended up being really good.
Oh, good.
But the Instapots are great because you can actually saute in there.
Oh, really? See, I don't have an Instapot. And
It's nice.
One thing I get.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to get yelled at for this. But yeah, I love a good crock pot. Email me that steakhouse sauce.
Yeah, I will.
Seriously. Back to the AFC East, the crock pot of professional football. The Bills are the 6th seed right now.
You know what's crazy? You know what's even crazier about our, this AFC East conversation? We're going into week 11, and you not only can you say that every single team is in the playoffs if the season ended today, you could also make the argument that the Bills are the team that's trending in the worst direction out of all of them. Again, not that they're not going to, go they're not going to go the furthest or anything like that, but at the moment, this team does feel like they're kind of on the downswing while everybody else in that division kind of feels like they have some positive momentum.
I think it's a great point. I mean, I don't know, and we talked about this on the podcast. Obviously, we spent 30 minutes on the Bills Vikings game. Like that's how, and it didn't feel like it was like too much either. No. Like it felt like that big a game, that important. And I thought this is a good headline. NFL Week 10 overreaction to reality checks by our own Jeff Kerr. Can Kirk Cousins reach the Super Bowl? Is Josh Allen regressing? Now, I don't think Josh Allen is regressing, and that's not me. It's not me questioning Jeff's headline here at all. I do think that Josh Allen is not healthy, and I think that, or maybe he is regressing, but is regression caused by his UCL injury, the elbow injury that's been reported. Like the last 10 quarters for Josh Allen have not been very good.
And I mean, for me, the most jarring thing was that game-sealing interception the other day to Pat Peterson. I mean, I don't know what he was looking at, because the broadcast had a great angle because it was behind the line of scrimmage. You could see, it was almost like an all-22 view of what he was looking at. And it was Gabe Davis going over the middle of the field deep in the end zone. And not only was the throw questionable, but the way in which he threw it as well. It's not like he was trying to loft it over a couple of defensive backs and kind of rainbowed it to Gabe Davis to try to get the touchdown. He was trying to bullet it through the secondary on a seed, and there was really no window there for him to find it. I mean, if he did, it's arguably the throw of the year. There was no clear path for him. Peterson was right there to go pick it off. To me, the vision is what's concerning, because I feel like we saw that last week against New York as well. Maybe could that be caused by the elbow or whatever, but to me, it's more vision right now for Josh Allen, because I thought he threw the ball fine and he's running around. He's unbelievably tough. He's a huge, huge physical specimen to really just barrel over guys. To me, it was the vision that I think was the more underrated thing that he's been lacking over the last couple of weeks.
I tend to think though too that and we talked about this last night, and I just can't remember. I'm exhausted right now for some reason. I'm very tired. But like I'm trying. We're talking about the fact that Josh Allen, the elbow situation, is going to cause a change in his mechanics, a change in his velocity, a change in his ability to make the throws that he wants to make. I also sort of wonder, does the elbow situation and his arm in any way help to facilitate that fumble on the 1 yard line? That, because you're gripping the ball.
Yeah.
Like early in the game, he was down on the ground. He's holding his elbow. He's not making the throws that we've seen him make. He's still playing the way that he wants to play, and I think that's dangerous. And to me, it's like, you make that tackle on the interception. Like, This I don't understand. What I want to know is would it be possible for Josh Allen to sit several weeks and have the injury improve? Or is it simply he has to play through it and it's just a matter of time until it causes his season to end? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the answer to that.
The answer to that because I'm not, not a licensed medical professional, but
And again, you could probably make the argument either way, but right now, I just think that Buffalo can't afford to sit Josh Allen. They're not in a position to. They're not Philadelphia, where they ripped off 8 straight wins to begin the year, and you can kind of cherry pick things if you really wanted to. Like you just said, would you say that the 6th seed in the AFC right now? I mean, they needs some catching up to do. And we've talked about it before. I think Baltimore has a chance to go on a run for a number 1 seed just because of their schedule. Kansas City continues to look like Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. They're going to continue to pile up wins. Buffalo is such a home field advantage. Obviously wasn't the case yesterday, but still, that is an atmosphere that you want to play in when you're the Buffalo Bills and you're the home team. If all of a sudden you're telling me that that's not even, that's 1 round, that's a divisional round game, a wild card weekend game.
Oh, you're talking about even just the divisional win. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
It's just, that's crazy to me. And so, as much as the elbow thing is going to get a lot of discussion, and rightfully so, there's another big picture question that stretches beyond that with the Buffalo Bills. And it's whether or not they can win 1-score games. Because that has been a huge problem for this team well before Josh Allen started dealing with this elbow problem. You go back to last year, they were 0-6 in 1-possession games. You look at this season, they're 2-3 in 1-possession games, including losing the last 2 games against obviously the Minnesota Vikings and New York Jets. That's a concern. And we talk about the addition of Von Miller in the 13 seconds against Kansas City last year and how a guy like that can help and that can take you over the top defensively and help you shut down teams. So far, you're 2-3 in that respect this year. And I don't know whether it's a combination of Allen struggling because of his injuries or if the defense isn't shutting things down. To me, that's the biggest problem for this team right now. They can't seem to put teams away when they have all the firepower.
And you look at, I think, look at the win probability. I just looked at ESPN's because I know how to find it really quickly. But 97.6% win probability for the Bills with 11 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And they had a 14-point lead. They had a 10-point lead in the 14-point lead in the third quarter, a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. I mean, we've seen a lot of this in the NFL this year, and I do think that the league has purposely the league likes the idea of teams being able to storm back from big deficits and to stay involved in games in which might otherwise be blowouts. I think the league has crafted a series of rules and sort of set it up in a way to make that viable. The officials were also pretty bad in that game. This game, it was Buffalo and Minnesota. But I agree with you. If Buffalo is forced to play as a wild card, it's going to mean a couple of things. One, no home field advantage, you point out. 2, it means Josh Allen's playing all 18, he's playing all 17 games. He's not going to be sitting, he's going to be resting in week 18 when you would love to get him a free week. Plus into the, if you had the number 1 seed, which it looked like they were locked into when they beat the Chiefs, you have, you would get the week, you would potentially sit week 18, rest him then. You get, of course, the bye, which is massive if you're trying to rest your quarterback. I just don't know how many times, Sully, can Josh Allen throw 43 times a week for the rest of the season without his arm falling off? The guy's tough. I'm sure he'll play through it. I just would love to know, they listed him as hour by hour, which is, coach talk, but it's I would just love to know what the options are for Buffalo in terms of Josh Allen. And I agree with you. They can't really afford to sit him, but I would rather have healthy Case Keenum for 4 weeks. I'd said do it starting with the Vikings, and then the next 2 weeks you rest him, and then you have 3 divisional games, which is looking like it's going to determine who gets that seed. I would rather rest him, play Case Keenum, try and win with use your defense, try and steal some wins, and then have healthy Allen down the stretch. Because if this is what we're getting for the rest of the year, the Bills are not going to be, the Bills are not going to be who we thought they were. To paraphrase Denny Green. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, the Raiders, the Colts, trouble in Las Vegas next. So The Las Vegas Raiders beat the Colts, which I actually predicted in the revenge game parlay, although I didn't actually profit whatsoever off of it, which is pretty embarrassing. What's the bigger story coming out of this game? Is it the Jeff Saturday win or the Josh McDaniels loss?
It's the Josh McDaniels loss to me. We do see this all the time in the NFL. When a team fires their head coach, there is a bounce back that next game. Everybody galvanizes, and it's us against them, and we're going to go and kind of show that we're respectable. I don't think collectively, I mean, maybe you did because you said that they were going to win, but I think a lot of us kind of scoffed at that idea, that possibility, just because you're talking about stuff that we talked about last week.
I didn't really believe they were going to win.
A first-time head coach that's in every sense of the word a first-time head coach. No offensive play callers with legitimate experience. So that is just a massive, swing there. So I don't know if we're necessarily saying, okay, they're going to, figure things out. And also, we didn't know that Matt Ryan was going to play in this game. That's a whole other thing too. I think that would have changed at least my perception of it when we talk about the offensive play callers, because in the opening press conference, they were saying Sam Ehlinger is the guy. That was who was going to start. And all of a sudden pregame, it was, here comes Matt Ryan working with the first team offense. And so clearly when you switch things from a former MVP to a, basically guy in third or fourth start in his career, clearly that's going to make a difference for them. But it's got to be what's going on in Las Vegas. And I don't know. I know you can't get rid. I don't know. I know that you don't want to get rid of Josh McDaniels right now, but boy, if this was ever going to happen,
if he wasn't in his first year, like if he, again, we talk about the Cliff Kingsbury, the Josh McDaniels stuff, like they have big contracts. These teams don't want to have to pay him for not working. Like if Josh McDaniels in they had a year left on his contract, he gone.
Yeah.
Or if the financials weren't a ramification, a serious ramification, because they are. I mean, like the Raiders and the Cardinals specifically just don't have as much money. If those weren't serious like financial considerations, he's fired. You see the headline to our left on YouTube, youtube.com/pick6. Subscribe, rate, and review, or subscribe. Turn on alerts, smash the like button. Davante Adams questions Raiders' commitment after another loss. Same thing as all the other weeks, pretty much. The perennial all-pro wideout dejectedly said, guys have got to play for one another, play a full game. That's 60 minutes from start to finish, coming out, starting fast, and closing out games, taking on that burden, wanting to be the guy to make the play. Don't got enough guys that are fully bought into that right now. I think people like the idea, but when it comes time to actually execute, it don't turn out that way. Man, that to me is, and we like to play read between the lines of Brady Quinn, but I mean, like when you question your teammates' commitment, I think you're obviously, you are saying, hey, like these guys aren't trying hard enough, but like, I think it also questions your coach.
I was just going to say that is Davante Adams is telling you without explicitly saying it, and maybe not even really meaning it, that the message that Josh McDaniels is providing to the team is just not getting through. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just not whatever he is saying in the meetings and, prior to the games, and what he is trying to instill in this team is not coming through. And it's a little bit surprising to me because there was, I feel, a really an effort put through this offseason when he took the job with Las Vegas to bring in a couple of veteran former New England Patriots players, Brandon Bolden, Duron Harmon, and they all talked about instilling that type of Patriots culture. Now, it could be, and I don't think that necessarily this is exactly going to be the case, because McDaniels essentially said as much. One of his biggest mistakes in Denver was, like all of these Belichick disciples, trying to be too much like Bill Belichick,
right,
and trying to recreate that type of a culture when you don't really have the merits to do so. Belichick can point to all of his previous success and say, this is why I'm doing this. You're Josh McDaniels. Yeah, you were along for the ride for a lot of that and a big contributor on the offense, but you don't really have that same cachet. I do wonder if maybe he's not almost doing a carbon copy of what's going on in New England, but even if it's 75, 60% of it, is that still ringing hollow to a lot of these players?
Yeah, and McDaniels wanted to be less brash, less cocky, more humble in his return to being a head coach. I think he's done a good job of that. Like I don't think he's been the only sideshow is the fact that he's losing all these games. Like if the Raiders were 500 and had just had a couple tough one-score losses, I think we'd say, difficult division, first-year head coach, a serious lack of talent on the roster, particularly because of the Mike Mayock, John Gruden drafts that just left them without, just wasted first-round picks on players. Although, Josh Jacobs has been very good this year. I think it is so tough, man. I'm not huge into firing coaches in their first year. I think it's a crazy move, especially when you went and got the guy, Josh McDaniels, who people have been trying, to drag out of New England for years. Obviously the Denver thing happened back in 2010, but then he went to Indy, then went back, and his name is always in these coaching cycles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they'll fire him after 1 year. I don't think they'll fire him in the middle of 1 year, but I mean, who knows? You see what happens in Indianapolis. Like, you never know.
Wouldn't it be somewhat poetic if all of a sudden a 25-20 loss to the Indianapolis Colts, the team he infamously left at the altar, and then the following week he has to go to Denver, the team he used to formerly coach, and if all of a sudden you put a lackluster type of outing that we've seen over these last
against
few
the
weeks
lackluster Broncos team,
against the Broncos team that can do nothing.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden that is the nail in the coffin, that is some
deep
sick,
level irony, isn't it?
That is some sick, twisted NFL gods playing right
and I love some irony. So let's look at the schedule for the Raiders. They have, they're at Denver and then at Seattle. And then Chargers at home. 3 pretty huge games, winnable games.
Yes.
You can win those games.
Yes.
You won't be favored in any of them, but you can win those games. They've got it's just at some point, do you think Mark Davis wishes he still had Rich Bisaccia in there? I'm not kidding.
They seem to play tough last year. Again, it's tough to translate what the 2021 Raiders did as opposed to the 2022 Raiders are doing, but it did feel like they had some sort of a culture, but it's going to be interesting. As much as you're saying,
oh my God, they still have to play the Pats too.
Well, that's where I was getting at, because that's a game that obviously a bunch of people up here are circling. It's a huge travel
Sunday night game too.
That place is going to be littered with 45-year-old Teddy Bruschi jersey, beer-loving guys.
I'll tell you too, it's interesting, Sully, when we look at the schedule. So we mentioned at Broncos, at Seahawks, versus Chargers at home. All 4:00 window games. Probably smells like CBS games. The next 3 games after that, at Rams versus the Patriots, at the Steelers, are all on prime time, but the Pittsburgh game is on Christmas Eve. That's a recipe for getting fired.
Well, this is where I was getting at with the Patriots stuff. That Rams game is on a Thursday night. It's a Thursday night football game, obviously on Amazon. That is a window when you go from that Thursday to this next Sunday. That's a very common kind of pocket where we see quarterback changes, where we see coach firings. My question would be, does he make it to the Patriots game? If you go 0-4, and which is, again, we say that they're winnable games, they're also losable games. I don't know if you're going to be. It depends on what happens with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford over these next few weeks. But in Los Angeles against the Rams, you're probably going to be the underdog in that game. If all of a sudden you lose on that stage to a Rams team that has been historically bad as a defending champion, that might do it. An 0-4, which would mean you have lost then 7 in a row. That's then you're getting into red alert area.
Yeah, and let's not forget either that the win against Houston, by the way, in week 7 coming off the bye, feels like a million years ago. Since then, at New Orleans, they lose 24-0, just shut out, completely humiliated by New Orleans defense. You go at Jacksonville and lose 27-20 with a big lead. I think that
17-point lead to the Jaguars.
You blow a 17-point lead to the Jaguars. And then you get Jeff Saturday at home in his coaching debut against what you thought was Sam Ellinger. Turns out to be Matt Ryan. By the way, we'll touch on Saturday too, but the fact that he's able to, at the last minute, he's like, no, I'm playing Matt Ryan when Frank Reich couldn't, is kind of stupid, but also I think speaks to just how much he's been given carte blanche in Indianapolis to do whatever he wants. They have the OT loss to the Cardinals. The losses are just ugly. There's no, it's not all right, you're just being, mean, I guess you could argue they're like, all right, let's say there's less talent on this team than we think. The fact that they're in these games, does that helpful? I mean, not doesn't matter for the public perception. I think he makes it to New England. I don't think they'll fire him before that game. I don't think.
I mean, I don't think so, but I'm just saying when you look at the road that they could potentially be going down, it would be grounds to be fired. I don't know if it necessarily happens because again, so much turnover for that organization. You do want some stability, and I do wonder quickly where is the decision-making process going to be? Is it going to be Mark Davis is making that call and he's negotiating with Dave Ziegler, the new GM, who is with Josh McDaniels? They came over together from New England. Or is he looking at this entire package and saying, listen, I committed to this. Let me see this thing through, at least through a draft, so we can see how they develop, because that's obviously a huge thing that this team has struggled with.
What was his contract?
I don't know. I mean, I just remember they were like really weird about his hiring. Like, remember, like
it was Florio tweeted out the buyout may be the only thing saving Josh McDaniels becoming the New England offensive coordinator next week. Yeah, I'll be curious.
I think I'd rather Frank Reich at this point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you don't want him in there. Yeah. I mean, I think so. I don't know exactly what his contract was. It can't be a small contract.
No, because it's the second time as a head coach, super successful with New England in terms of resume, hot candidate. As much as we're saying this is going poorly, hot candidate always was very choosy in how he wanted to do it. So I don't know exactly, but I know that they were weird.
Contracts are not released from the coaching standpoint, but you have to think that, I mean, he's, it's more than it's probably, let's see, I mean, how many years was it? I mean, I would say somewhere between let's say it's a 4-year deal. Just hypothetically, $20 million. I mean, it's $20 million.
Sure.
At least.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's just something that's tough to stomach. Even if it's 5 years, let's say it's 5 years, $5 million, $25 million. Like, you got to get through 3 years of that, I think.
Right. And we've talked about this before. This could be a drawn out type of, soul searching effort where you strip away the quarterback first. Then if that doesn't work and they don't bring in their quote unquote quarterback, whether that be somebody in the draft, is it Jimmy Garoppolo? Is it Tom Brady? Like, you could point to a bunch of different guys that are potentially on the market for them to replace Derek Carr with. But I think that would be the first move. And again, you're not seeing that move until the offseason, until 2023.
Billy Charleston in Slack that just says it's like it's tough. It's a Google. It's like you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to release this stuff, but like you do with the players, 4 years, $6.13 million. So I mean, we're talking $25 million range if you wanted to get rid of him right now. I don't think Mark Davis will want to do that. I think given what happened with John Gruden, I think he'll want to try to see. Like if they go 2-15. And then he comes back and they lose their first 6 games next year, maybe that's a whole different ballgame. Like if he just sucks, but you kind of, I mean, you got to give him I don't know. I think you got to give him at least one more off season and see how it goes. And look, they could win 4 of their next 5 games. Is it likely to happen? No, because they haven't been very good, but they're in these 1-score games most of the time. So I think that's sort of where, I'm not trying to like overly preach patience here. I just think it's a little bit of a folly to suggest that financially speaking, Mark Davis will just move on right away.
Yeah, I just think the biggest thing that we can take away, obviously, you can very much see that they're not playing well. They're losing these games in tough fashion. To me, the most damning thing is what we brought up earlier, the Davante Adams quote, where it's telling you that the message isn't getting through. It's not that there's poor execution on certain plays and, Derek Carr throws an interception or Josh Jacobs fumbles or whatever. Like you could talk away even, the Josh Allen fumbles in the goal. Like you could say, okay, listen, he's injured. There's things happening. You can't really say that right now with Vegas. And when you have your star player, your best player on offense, and Davante Adams, basically saying, when you read between the lines, the message isn't really coming through. That's what concerns me most when we talk about Josh McDaniels' job security.
Absolutely. Let's start on the other side too. Jeff Saturday gets the win. Can you hear my dog barking?
I heard it just once, but that was it.
I'm going to go. All right. What are your thoughts on Jeff Saturday's victory? He said going to get his dog and tell him to shut up.
No, I mean, obviously, like super impressive. Like we were saying earlier too, the fact that Matt Ryan played in this game, I think changes it because I didn't think that they were going to win at all. I thought that this was going to be a game where Sam Ehlinger probably has a couple of drives, and you're talking about single digits. I mean, I had the under in this game, and that shot me in the foot. So the fact that you have a guy like Matt Ryan leading your offense, I do think helped kind of stabilize things a little bit more because like we were saying earlier, it's not like there was complete unknowns in terms of the play callers, whether it be Saturday or the interim offensive coordinator. You had Matt Ryan there, a former MVP, someone that has the ability, not like Sam Ehlinger, who is so green. I think that helped you immensely in this game. And ultimately, you did have a vintage performance from Jonathan Taylor. I think that obviously sparked things offensively. But you do look at it, and I think one of our editors, Kevin, said this in the Slack room this morning talking about Saturday. It is going to be funny if all of a sudden we kind of find out that, like, you do need different qualifications to be a head coach. It shouldn't just be the elevation from coordinator to head coach.
So it's a funny juxtaposition with Josh McDaniels too, right?
Maybe, yeah, exactly. Like maybe there is something to be said for just having that ability to galvanize and to lead a group and know where to delegate and know where to say,
oh, hey, yeah, 100%.
Like I don't need to call plays. I need to know how to execute in certain situations and know to put the right people in power to do those things. So that's going to be a fascinating thing. Again, it's really weird how he got the job. It's really, it's an odd situation all around, but it would be kind of hilarious if all of a sudden this thing worked and you're like, oh yeah, you actually can find, I don't know necessarily former players, but those types of guys that just lead a room and you put those coordinators in their spots.
I do think, and I don't disagree with you. I do think that it's a little bit of an overreaction, like coming back the other way now,
for sure.
Where we're like, well, I know we all laughed at our laughs last week, but maybe we should pump the brakes on killing Jeff Saturday. Like their next 3 games at the Colts, Eagles at home, Steelers at home, at the Cowboys. I do wonder if this is a little bit of a okay, because the reality is when a coach is fired, everyone, or when a coordinator is fired, everyone on that side of the ball or everyone on that team, you realize you're like, oh, like we are, like people's jobs, like
you are in fight or flight mode.
Yeah,
that is what you are in those situations, because it's not just at this point. The Band-Aid's already been ripped off. Jobs are starting to get lost.
Correct.
You don't want to be the one that loses their job. So I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, and so like you see that immediate bounce back. Plus you have this Jeff Saturday comes in and like is giving the rah-rah stuff, and it's it works for week 1 against the first week against the Raiders on the road. Bad football team that clearly, like I would bet too that a lot of the Raiders, even with their terrible record, thought we were going to smoke this Colts team. Yeah. In the back of your mind, you're like,
I think that they probably sit back and go, "This is our get right game."
Yeah, and then they come out flat. What do you think? How many games do the Colts win between now and their bye? I'm going to say 0.
Yeah, 0.
2-1 would be really good for them.
Yeah, no.
Like if they go 2-1 against the Eagles, Steelers, and Cowboys, then Jeff Saturday is like in Coach of the Year discussion.
Right. That's not happening. I mean, you're realistically looking at. I mean, honestly, you're probably looking at 2 wins the rest of the way. Like if you can clip Pittsburgh,
so week 14 at Minnesota versus the Chargers, at the Giants versus the Texans. I mean, what's the win total that he need that would like just guarantee him the job?
I don't even think that there's a number. I think that it's
how is this team taken care of?
Say it again.
Do you think it's a what thing?
I think it's a how the team is playing type of a thing. It's not necessarily you have to win X amount of games. Is the team lifeless? Does it look like the Raiders? Or are you kind of plucky? Are you like a Commanders team that we've seen over the last few weeks with Heineke? Like you're just you kind of
I agree completely. I think 0-8, but like in every game and try like hustling and like everybody cares and all that. I think that would have still like I think Jim Irsay wants to give him this job.
Yeah, I think that's clear. I mean,
yeah.
I think you said it or somebody said it. I think you tweeted it. Like this does not look like when they were doing there's introductory press conference. That didn't feel like a interim head coach introductory press conference.
No, it felt like I want this guy to be the face of my franchise. Yeah. And, I think too, there's something to it where you take the L, and I'm not trying to suggest that Jim Irsay is playing 4D chess or anything like this, but like you take the L now in the middle of the season for a week. And you could have made it easier by just not doing that crazy press conference. But like you take the L from the public law, like the public hit for hiring this guy with no coaching experience in the offseason during the season, and you give him the shot of like again, team tries hard, win a couple of games. You can then go through the actual interview process, and you can point back to and say, when you hire Jeff Saturday, you point back and say, look, he has head coaching experience. He was a head coach for half of a season, and we feel like he did a good job here. Whereas if you fire Frank Reich and promote John Fox to the interim, and then this offseason you do several interviews, you do your minority interviews to comply with the Rooney Rule, and then you interview Jeff Saturday, everybody's like, that's hilarious. Like Jeff Saturday is the coach of the Colts. It would be such a bigger deal in the offseason, like it was with Josh McCown. Yeah, and the Texans, then it's still a big deal in the season, but it's like, you know what, we got to keep like everybody's got to move on to the next week.
Like as much as we're talking about it right now, everybody's talking about the Buffalo Vikings game. I mean, it's just the cycle. It was
the third thing we talked about today.
Right, exactly.
And
meanwhile, if we have, I don't know, all of like March to talk about,
we need a Tuesday podcast. Let's talk about it. Like we're gonna do Jeff Saturday all.
And that's just the way the business rolls. I mean, that's just,
of course. But again, I'm not trying to say that I don't think Irsay is that clever to know to do that to avoid the hit. But
I don't know if it was to avoid the hit. I just think he genuinely wanted him to be the head coach. Yeah. And this is a very easy way for him to not only put him in there right now, but later on there is that, all right, well, if it doesn't work out, we can get rid of him. But if it does work out, now I have grounds to keep him.
Exactly. And Saturday, in an interview with Peter King for Football Morning in America, Peter King asked him a week ago tonight, what were you doing? I was leaving Monday morning for ESPN, so I was actually at home. Jim Irsay called me and just said, hey, will you talk to Karen about this? See if you'd be willing to do it. He was going to talk to Chris Ballard and have the conversation with him. So Irsay called Jeff Saturday, was like, what do you think? I will make you the head coach for the rest of the season. What do you think? And then was like, hey, Chris Ballard, here's what we're doing. And then he says, anyway, I talked to my wife that night, and he was asked about Bill Cowher. He said, I respect his opinion, et cetera, et cetera. He said, Joe Thomas, asked him, Joe Thomas said to the hire, when you hire your drinking buddy, Saturday said, I had no idea that he said that. I can assure you, I've never gone drinking with Jim. I love that he he's really focuses on the drinking aspect of this. I didn't even know that Jim drinks. I don't drink very much either. I don't know Joe. I'm not worried about what Joe thinks about me or anybody else, et cetera, et cetera. I thought he handled it pretty well because he got thrashed. So like, as much as I think Jim Irsay is a total wild card, I give Jeff Saturday credit. Like, they won the game, and he said all the right things so far.
Yeah, and again, there are some people who are like, why did he shouldn't have taken the job? Everybody's taking the job. Everybody's taking the job. No one is saying no to the job.
And he also pointed out, he's like, I was at ESPN when Aaron Boone was there, and then 2 days later, he's the manager of the Yankees. It's a fair point. Like, he said he was like talking baseball with Aaron Boone on a Sunday night, and it's like the next morning, Boone's gone. He's the manager of the Yankees. And he talked with Tony Dungy and Jim Caldwell. I don't pretend to be the smartest coach on the staff. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Like, he's like, I know football. I mean, again, I'm not saying that he's a great head coach. We've seen one game. Winning that game in on the road in your first week definitely helps the narrative. I'll tell you that much.
Sure, of course. I mean, if they came out and had that lifeless performance that I think a lot of people expected, or not even lifeless,
if they got blown out by the Raiders, you're like, oh boy.
and like it looks like a high school team going up against a NFL team, then you're like, okay, what is going on here? At least this, like you're saying, tempers things down a little bit. But as we're both saying here, we're not putting him in Canton right now. We're it's just one game. Let's see how it goes. They're probably going to win. They're going to lose more games than they win. And there are going to be some bad games, and there's going to be some questionable, inexperienced decision, making as we go forward here. But right now, you checked the box. You did what you were supposed to do.
Yep, absolutely. All right. We checked the box on a Monday. It's a press coverage show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll bring back the Marvel and the Marvel Crockpot show later. Sully, it's always a pleasure, buddy. Appreciate it. For Sully, I'm Brinson. Talk to you guys later.